Complaining and blaming makes you powerless. Don't give your power away. You're welcome to Conversations with Michael Ogunshola, the Peak Performance Strategist. I create this content because I believe that you were created for peak performance. And I am your Peak Performance Strategist. Your journey to peak performance continues now. The most common things anyone can do is to complain or blame. In a culture of people not taking responsibility, the easiest thing to do is to complain or blame somebody when things are not working. You see, the idea of complaining and blaming, it's because you believe that something can fundamentally be done about it. But the challenge most of the time is we complain to the wrong person. Whenever you complain and blame, you become a victim. And when you're a victim, at best, what you can attract is a pity party. But the question is, do you want to be pitied? Because when you are pitied, it will not change your reality. It will make you feel bad. From bad, you feel worse. And you know that's not a good trajectory. And that's why on today's conversation, I'll be sharing how to give up complaining and blaming today. The idea is complaining and blaming, they are intertwined. And that's why I put them together. The first thing you can do if you want to give up complaining and blaming so that you can be empowered is you must take 100% responsibility. Taking 100% responsibility is quite challenging, but it is empowering, I must say. So the question will be, how do I stop complaining and blaming so that I can be the captain of my boat indeed? You see, you have to realize, number one, you are responsible for creating the outcome you desire. So when you look at the word responsible, it has two major words forming a word. The first is response, and the second is ability. Put them together, it is responsibility. In other words, you have the ability to respond. There is a difference between response and react, because the word itself is not called reactability. It's not reactability, which is what most of us do many of the times. It is called responsibility. In every situation you find yourself in life, you have the ability to respond. You see, response is mature. React is immature. People that respond to life, they plan ahead of events, or when events happen, they respond by thinking through their actions and inaction. So talking about response and ability, I will drive this point home with a practical life-changing experience. Two young boys were born into a home. Their dad drinks, and the third devil in his character is he womanizes. Now, guess what? These two young children, one grew up becoming an image of his dad. He drinks, he smokes, and he womanizes. And the other one grew up becoming a perfect gentleman. When they were both invited for an interview and they were asked, how come you were raised in the same home but you turned out differently? What made you different from your brother? Why did you become this perfect gentleman? And why did this young man become this person that drinks, smokes, and womanizes? The both of them gave the same response. And what's the response? The both of them said, my father. Why so? The both of them said my father, quite all right. But one understood the power of 100% responsible. He understands that the word itself is responsibility. So from understanding that the word is responsibility, he responded by seeing the implication of the life his father led, and he decided not to toe that path. While this other one that reacts, he reacted by soaking up the father's attitude, behavior, mindset, and belief system. And of course, he ended up like his father. That is the idea. Those that respond to life will always win, and those that react to life will always lose. Talking about how to give up blaming today, another thing you should understand is life is shared responsibility. The concept of shared responsibility for me is one of the messages, the core message I share with people whenever I'm called to speak or called to train. Because until you understand that concept, you are not going to make progress in your life. So what is the concept of shared responsibility? Shared responsibility said, for every action, there is an equal reaction. What we call the law of cause and effect. That is, for every result you desire, there is an input you must undertake. Shared responsibility tells us that I have my role to play and people have their role to play. There is the man part and there is the God part. Because the idea is, if you do not play your role, you will go about complaining about other people's role. Some religious people will always pray and expect that because they have prayed, things will line up according to their desire. Sometimes it's not always the case, because in as much as you have prayed, there is still an action component you must take, and that is your responsibility. This is how the scripture puts it. Paul planted, Apollos watered, and God gave the increase. I like to tell people, you see, effort is with you. Result is with God. You have to do your part by putting in the effort, by taking the action, by trying again and again, by, understanding this concept of shared responsibility. Paul planted, yes, Apollos watered, but God could have as well decide not to give increase. And that's not your business. That is the idea. In life, for every reaction, there is an equal action expected on your part. In other words, you complain about your wife's, not doing certain things. You complain about your promotion not coming. And the question you will be asked is, have you given your 120%? Because ultimately, if you desire promotion, for instance, and you work in an office, God is the rewarder of all. And whatever responsibility you are given, do it as unto God. Because in due season, you will be recognized and rewarded. If that organization cannot contain your personality and your ability or capacity, it's not enough for you to underperform. Give in your best, because the rewarder of all men is God. And He's taking record of everyone's action and inaction. When the time for your reward or promotion will come, I tell you, nobody will stop you. Because a man by the name Haman in scriptures, was a bad guy, permit me to say. He wanted to put down Mordecai. Mordecai is Esther's uncle, the man that nurtured Esther, the queen, and he did a good act. He saved the king at a particular point in time. That is his own part. A time now came, the rewarder of men, God, brought it to the consciousness of the king, and the king asked, what has been done to reward the man that saved me? He asked Haman. Haman thought he was the one that would be celebrated, and Haman made a whole lot of activity of honor surrounding the person that saved the king. And the king said, this is what I will do for Mordecai. The idea is, people that complain will always be limited. But people that take responsibility, like Mordecai, he was left with the young child, the girl, Esther. He raised her. He nurtured her. He brought her up in a sound manner. and a time came in Esther's life. She became a queen. Mordecai, he kept on doing good, helped the king when he had the opportunity to. And a time came in Mordecai's life, he was rewarded and celebrated. He could have as well complained, there is no point being kind or doing good. Despite all I did for this king, he did not even see me or recognize me. Who knows, maybe that's where you are right now. Don't do anything unto a man, do it unto God, because he's keeping account of everyone's action and inaction. And I tell you, your time for celebration is there. Shared responsibility is understanding that E plus R equals O. In other words, event plus response will equal outcome. The events of your life is not necessarily what will define your life. It is your response to that event. Like I shared in the first experience or story I shared with you, how that the same event happened to both of them. But one responded and the other reacted. And as a result, you saw the outcome. So never forget this formula. Shared responsibility simply means E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. Another point on overcoming the blame game or the blaming trap is this. You must understand that blaming and complaining about an event or an experience is an ineffective response. Why so? I had this true life story of a man. He shared it with me actually. He was raised by a man rather that had experienced 6 divorces. By the time this young man grew up, he was on his 3rd marriage when he was sharing this experience with me. And he said to himself, his last marriage, he realized that this woman had defrauded a lot of people and she had embezzled company's money and she was actually at large. Of course, he could have as well begun to complain that marriage is not for him or marriage doesn't work and all of that. But the man understands a singular truth. And what is that truth? That honestly, there is a failing. There is a failing on his part. And what is that failing? The failing on his part is he did not do his due diligence. He rushes into marriage and relationships, as it were. You see, you cannot take people at the face value. You must try to understand people, try to know people, do your due diligence. Should he have done his due diligence? Should he have taken time to build a relationship with the last marriage before he went into the last marriage? He would have known this woman's history and finances. And that's the idea. You see, when you fall into a sour experience or you find yourself in an unpleasant environment, rather than complaining about that environment, ask yourself, what can I do either to change this environment or to leave the environment altogether? Because ultimately, you cannot complain about an experience you tolerate. Like somebody always say, if you don't like where you are, move, because you are not a tree. Receiving value from what we're sharing, please do well to like this video, share this video, and hit the subscribe button if you have not subscribed already. Thanks for viewing. See, blaming and complaining makes you a victim. And this is a common trait of poor people and unsuccessful people. Successful people, on the other hand, they are self-sufficient and they deal with their problem as it comes. I'm reminded of a particular man that was doing well financially, but he became bankrupt. And as he was walking on the streets, he came across this other person that was begging him and asking him for help and all of that. And this man that is bankrupt said to himself, inside of himself, he said, this is you begging me, reaching out to me for financial help. You don't even know that I'm bankrupt financially right now. The idea is, the man that was bankrupt financially did not carry his problem on his head. That man overcame that bankruptcy. At the time, he was in $80 million bankruptcy. However, he overcame it and later became a billionaire in dollars. What's the idea? The idea is successful people have a way of handling challenges and problems and trying times, as it were. Unsuccessful people, they go about looking for attention, begging people here and there, and feeling even entitled to the help. Don't forget, we are looking at how to stop blaming and complaining. The idea of making excuses for failure and all of that, they are limiting. And that's why I'm walking us through this journey of how to overcome those kind of limiting ideologies so that we can be empowered. Understand this: you can't change the world or impact a generation by complaining, blaming, or giving excuse. How many of us remember Martin Luther King? Martin Luther King, what did he say? I have a complaint. No. I have an excuse. Of course, no. I have somebody to blame. No. Martin Luther King the Great says, I have a dream. We know him for his powerful dream. He said, I have a dream. And he went about working with that consciousness of creating the life he envisioned. That's the idea. He took responsibility for the reality of his time, and through his civil rights activity, he was able to birth a change. He was able to impact a generation. That is the idea. When you take personal responsibility, you will begin to think of how to create the life you desire. Taking responsibility for your past, taking responsibility for your present, it empowers you to create the kind of future you desire. When you are blaming situation, blaming governments, blaming leaders, blaming your spouse, blaming something, you are simply saying that the reason why you are unable to do what you want to do is because of the other person. And I tell you the truth, God will never make your life, or better said, God will never make the effectiveness of your life dependent on an external factor. Why so? Because God knows that you cannot change anybody. You can only change yourself. At best, you can influence people, but you cannot fundamentally change them. The ability and the power to change is in people. And when you always complain and say, my wife made me slap her, for instance. Listen to this. A woman cannot make a man slap her. That is within a marriage setting. The same wife that you said she made you slap her, somebody else will be with that woman, and in the heat of argument or misunderstanding, he will take his jacket and stroll. He will take a walk. You slap her because you are a slapper. The ability to slap is in you. That's the truth. Because the truth of the matter is, when you look at an insect, a cockroach, when you apply pressure on a cockroach, there is no cockroach that will come out with blood. Because blood cannot come out of you and go inside the cockroach and come out. In the same vein, when life puts pressure on you, it is what is inside of you that will come out. I said that to say, every time you blame something or somebody for your action or inaction, you are simply relinquishing your power. You are giving away your ability to make yourself happy. You are saying, I will not be happy until A or B does certain things. God has created you to be self-sufficient. Those that complain, in the final analysis, those that blame will not get to their promised land. I saw that in scriptures. The Israelites, they had the habit of complaining and blaming. And some of the things I'm sharing today is very relevant to leaders. Thought leaders, young leaders, listen to me. If you don't know how to handle the people you lead, they can drive you crazy. It happened to Moses. Moses, as great as he was as a leader, the people's murmuring and complaining made him to hit a rock that God said he should speak to. Hence, he couldn't enter his promised land. Those people too could not enter their promised land, except for two people, Caleb and Joshua, because they had a different spirit. Their spirit is not the spirit of complaining and blaming. Their spirit is the spirit of 100% responsible. These are the kind of people you should look up to. Say to yourself, if it's going to be, it's up to me. I have the power and the ability to make a difference. It starts with me. Please do well to like, share, and subscribe. I remain Michael Ogunshola, the Peak Performance Strategist, saying, Peak Performance, it is possible.